I'm a communications analyst with Energy, Mines, and Resources. Thank you for joining us this morning. This is another technical briefing on the heap leach facility failure that occurred at the Eagle Gold Mine. Our aim is to give you an update today on what's new since our last briefing. If you weren't able to attend last week and you're after background information, please reach out to me afterwards and I'll try my best to help out. As we said last week, we appreciate many people have questions and concerns about the situation. We don't have all the answers at this point, but we're here to share what we do know, and we commit to provide further updates as more information becomes available. I'd like to introduce our speakers, some of whom will offer introductory comments before we open the floor to questions. Today, we're joined by John Stryker, Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, who will be offering some remarks at the top. We also have Stephen Mead, our Assistant Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources. Kelly Constable is our Director of Mineral Resources. Her branch is the main mining regulator in the territory. With her is Aaron Dowd, Manager of Major Mine Licensing. Will Tunian is our Director of Compliance, Monitoring and Inspections. With him is Seven Bonnet, the branch's Manager of Major Mines and Operations North. From the Workers' Safety and Compensation Board, we have Bruce Milligan, Director of Workplace Health and Safety. From the Department of Community Services, we have Devin Bailey, Director of Wildfire Management. From the Department of Environment, we have Tyler Williams, a Water Resources Specialist. And joining remotely, I believe, we have Dr. Sudit Ranadad, our Chief Medical Officer of Health. We'll begin with comments from Minister Stryker.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're on the traditional territory of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Ta'an Quechan Council. And as we discuss the ongoing situation at Victoria Gold, it's important to also acknowledge that we're discussing the traditional territory of the First Nation of Nacho-Naik-Dun. As we work together to address the challenges and concerns arising from the heap leach failure, we are committed to respecting and honoring the perspectives and voices of all affected First Nations. As a mining regulator, the government of Yukon's priority is ensuring that mining is conducted safely and that the environment is protected. As part of fulfilling these responsibilities, we have been busy collecting on-site information to guide our next steps, and this data is crucial in shaping our response. We are committed to ongoing testing in the watershed over time and sharing that information with the public. Last night, we received our first verified results from 4 samples collected near the mine site on June 25th. The water quality objective leaving the mine site under the water license for Victoria Gold is 5 parts per billion of cyanide, or 0.005 milligrams per liter. The sample taken right next to the bottom of the slide indicates a cyanide presence of 8.58 milligrams per liter. This water is being diverted to a containment structure and will be treated by Victoria Gold. 2 sites downstream in Dublin Gulch show nominal levels of cyanide, measuring at 0.001 milligrams per liter and less than 0.001 milligrams per liter. The sample of concern collected in Haggart Creek, which is just downstream from where Dublin Gulch enters Haggart Creek, shows elevated levels of cyanide at 0.04 milligrams per liter. When we receive these verified results, excuse me. When we received these verified results, we shared them with the First Nation of Nacho-Naik-Dun last night. This level of cyanide in Haggart Creek could potentially affect fish. Whether this concentration of cyanide in the water will actually affect fish depends on other chemicals in the water. Water quality sampling is ongoing and fish toxicity testing is underway. Once it was safe to to do following the wildfires in the area, we sent crews to continue collecting more samples. Again, it will be ongoing. We've also retained experts in aquatic science and water quality to help us understand the risks and impacts on the aquatic environment. The sample of concern represents a starting data point in a broader series of samples we will need to navigate this situation. It is one piece of the larger puzzle we are diligently putting together. We recognize the need for answers and a comprehensive understanding of the situation. Testing and analysis are ongoing. Our understanding of the situation, as testing and analysis are ongoing, our understanding of the situation will become more clear. We appreciate your patience. We are committed to providing ongoing updates to Natronite and the public. Based on new information gathered on site yesterday, Natronite and the Yukon government officials met this morning to establish a joint list of priorities related to safety and environmental protection. Technical experts identified important concerns regarding the stability of the remaining heap, including the potential for further slides and the fact that the camp is below the bottom of the existing slide. Any additional slide has the potential to also risk further environmental contamination. As a mining regulator, we have a range of enforcement tools within our legislation that enable us to address these concerns. We are listening to our technical experts and collective leadership working as quickly as possible across government departments to mitigate these concerns. As Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources, my focus during this evolving situation has been on supporting the Yukon government's efforts to coordinate effectively, work safely and efficiently, and provide accurate updates. From the beginning, government staff have been working hard to manage this situation responsibly while adapting to the changing wildfire conditions in the area. I want to sincerely thank everyone for their understanding as we address this complex and critical issue. We understand the seriousness of the heap leach failure at the Eagle Gold Mine on Monday, June 24th. We all love this place we call home. We all share a responsibility to safeguard it for future generations. That includes our government, Victoria Gold, and everyone else who has the honor to explore and occupy this incredible territory. Many of us have questions, and of course, we want immediate answers. We will continue to provide updates on a regular basis. We understand the importance of people hearing from their government, just as it's important for them to hear directly from the mining company itself. Before we hear from our technical team officials, I want to thank all Government of Yukon employees who have been tirelessly responding to and informing the community about the impacts of the heap leach failure with as much information as we have available since it happened last week. Thanks as well to wildland firefighters dealing with all of the fires in the area, which further complicated our response, testing, and supply chains. We deeply appreciate everyone's hard work on this. Thanks, John. I'll stop there and look forward to the rest of the technical briefing.
Thank you, Minister. Next, we'll have some remarks from Kelly Constable, our Director of Mineral Resources.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Minister. To quickly recap the situation, on the morning of Monday, June 24th, a landslide occurred on the ore stockpile on the heap leach facility at the Eagle Gold project. The slide caused the ore to spill over the embankment at the base of the facility. The landslide was about 1.5 kilometers in length. The company estimates that the slide involved about 4 million tons of material. It estimates that about 2 million tons of this material left containment. The company moved quickly following the slide to build dams to hold back the contaminated water being released from the slide material. This water is being pumped into storage ponds. We have not received any reports of serious injuries. The company has voluntarily stopped mining operations at this time. The slide appears to have damaged some mine infrastructure, and the extent of this damage is not clear at this point. It is too early to say what caused the heap leach failure. Victoria Gold has reduced its staff at the site to about 60 essential workers. Water treatment is continuing at the site. The company is continuing its water treatment activities, and we are in regular communication with company officials. We are also in daily communication with the First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun. Our technical staff are committed to working collaboratively with the First Nation and their technical team as well. I'd like to underline that this is the company's site, and it is the company's responsibility to manage and respond to this failure. EMR's role as a regulator and enforcement body is to closely monitor the situation and to oversee, where appropriate, direct the company's protective and remediation actions, and to ensure that the environment is adequately protected. We are requiring that the company provide additional information. This includes daily updates on water management activities. We are also seeking an updated water management plan and an emergency response plan by the end of this week. We have retained a team of experts to assist us in understanding the risks and potential impacts of this event and identifying remediation options. Those experts include a heap leach engineer, a geotechnical engineer, a geochemist, and aquatic scientists. 2 of our technical experts visited the site yesterday, joined by Yukon government staff and a technical expert with the First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun. This gave them a valuable first-hand look at the site, and we look forward to hearing their perspective and to advise on next steps.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we'll have Will Tunian, Director of Compliance, Monitoring, and Enforcement.
Pardon me. Thank you, John. Our natural resource officers visit mine sites regularly to conduct inspections with the goal of ensuring mine operators are following terms and conditions of their licenses. We have a team of 30 natural resource officers across the territory, including a dedicated team specifically responsible for major mines. Seven Bonnet is our manager of major mines, and he is overseeing the crew, which is presently at the mine site as we speak.
Great, thank you. We will now turn it over to questions. Today, I'd like to ask everyone to keep it to 1 question per reporter so that I have a chance to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask what's on their mind. If we have time, we'll do follow-up questions. We will begin with reporters in the room. If you're online and you have a question that you'd like to ask, if you could please indicate that in the chat, and that will help us organize things. Jim with the Yukon News, do you have a question?
Thank you very much. Just having heard that it remains Victoria Gold's site and their responsibility, I'd just like to ask about the communication we received from them this morning, that they've received a default notice from some of their lenders. Is there a plan in place should they no longer be able to carry out their responsibilities on the site?
Sure. If you want to make comments, that's great. So turn it over to Charles.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Look, the situation for Victoria Gold is theirs, and we just got their press release this morning as well. What I will say is that we have been encouraging them to talk with the public, so I'm glad that that is there, and I was also appreciated that they had some information in there. I mean, we're not typically involved with the financing of mines. That's not our role. But of course, we recognize that when there is this type of slide at a facility, that's going to put a lot of financial pressure. We all saw what happened to their shares. So of course, we pay attention to that, because right now, Victoria Gold are the people who are on site and have the equipment on site and the capability to put in place many of the mitigative measures that we really want to see for ensuring safety and protecting the environment as much as we can. So, you know, we remain aware that there is that they are facing serious challenges, and we will be prepared to step in if they do go into if they do leave the site or go into default or whatever that looks like. But at this time, we work with the situation as it is. So we act as the regulator, and the mining company works to do this work. And one of the things that I will note out of their press release that came this morning was that they too have listed the same two priorities that we established in working with National. Number one, safety on the site, and number two, environmental protection. No, those are broad issues, but that has been our main focus, and I'm glad it's theirs as well.
Good. Okay. Thank you for that. I see we have Sarah from APTN. Would you like to ask a question?
With the levels that have been found, is there any risk to human health with that?
Yeah, do we have the chief health officer on the call? We'll just give him a moment here. Says that you can't unmute.
Hello? Does that work now? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, I think when we think about the health impacts, we think about them in a few different buckets, and I'll try to go through that, right? Many of them have been covered, but just to reiterate, right? The first health bucket, the most likely source of the highest exposure in this kind of situation is occupational. And so that is being managed on site by the person who is running the facility. So the company that's running the facility is supposed to manage the occupational risk to workers. When you think about downstream effects, you think about a few things. Anyone in the immediate vicinity and what their exposures might be. And so certainly for recreational water use in the immediate vicinity of the site, we're recommending that people avoid that for now. But that's more of a precaution than a known feature of like that we think that the levels are so high that people need to avoid it. It's just because there are still some unknowns around some of the data that's coming through. It's more of a precautionary recommendation. And then when we think about sort of, are there any effects further downstream on drinking water use, things like that, it's very reassuring that the water samples that have come back from the regulated drinking water system show no concern. And that is also backed by sort of the watershed analysis that's been done by the Department of Environment that shows that there would likely be limited transfer of things from that site towards the groundwater system from which that regulated system draws its water source. So from a drinking water perspective, the watershed analysis plus the confirmatory sampling on the drinking water system shows that there really isn't a concern there. And then when you walk it back again, it's the worker occupational exposures that need to be managed directly on site by the people who are there and by the corporation in control of the facility, and the immediate potential exposures as a precaution, we're advising people just to remain away from that, the immediate vicinity of the creek if you're using the waters for recreation.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. Macklin, do you have a question?
Yeah, so this is just building off the first question. I understand the Yukon government has $104 million in bonds from Victoria Gold. So now that they've put forward, I guess, this notice of default, is there a chance that you might not see that money?
Thanks, Macklin. So the answer is no. First of all, let's get a few things clear here. I don't know. I haven't read that in their press release that they've given a notice of default. That isn't what I've got at all from it. They were identifying other concerns around their loans, but they would need to approach us and say that they're moving away from this site. Okay, that has not happened. Vic Gold is the company on site. Second of all, the whole point of a bond, a surety bond, is to make sure that there is money which has been collected for the remediation of the site should the mine company not complete it. Okay, so the first place we turn is to have the company do the cleanup. That's the process. And to be upfront, we reviewed the bond for Victoria Gold this past January, and they are fully paid up. Okay, so that's the good news. The difference, of course, now is that the site is not what it was back in January. And so that's going to cause us to rethink those questions. And maybe some of the team can talk more about how technically that works. We're not in that situation. And we do have that money secured, and it would be used for remediation should the mine company cease working.
Does anyone from Minerals want to elaborate on that, or?
Yeah. I think it's an important point to note that the security is based upon the remediation plan that a company submits, and that implies and is predicated upon a known state of the site at that time. As the minister said, there's been an event and the state of that site has now changed. One of the things that we have to do, amongst many things right now, is to look at what that might mean in terms of the actions you would have to take should the event occur when you have to remediate the site. Of course, now, as Kelly said earlier, we have some material from the heap leach that has escaped containment. Obviously, that would now require excavation replacement when it's safe to do so, should that have to be an outcome that remediation is necessary. So we would have to look at that remediation plan and then adjust it to match the current conditions. But that's something that's a contingency, depending on the outcomes of many other things. But that's something in the background that we're bending our mind to right now.
Thank you, Stephen. Tim from the Yukon Star, do you have a question?
Tim, here's the mic.
Yes, I do. I guess my question would be for the minister. Do you have any reaction to the statement yesterday from Nacho Nyack Dunn demanding an immediate stop to mining in their territory?
Thanks for the question, Tim. There are several things that I heard from Chief Hope, and both in the statement and in her comments and in the meetings that I had with her last week. She talked about the importance of land use planning. We are working to do land use planning. I've made that personal commitment to her, and I know the land use planning team has been working closely over the past year to establish it. It has some complications, of course, because the other two First Nations within that planning region have indicated to us they don't want to move forward with land use planning at this time, and so we're working to find that path to do it together respectfully with NND. With respect to legislation, I think she made that comment today about the importance of rewriting the Yukon's legislation, minerals legislation. That work is ongoing, and NND has been at the table all along, and I appreciate their involvement. With respect to the deeper question that she has posed, I think that we have heard that request, and I think that we will take time to think about it. The one thing that I want to just point out is that you want to be careful that, like, Victoria Gold has an important role right now, and that role is to address the safety concerns and the environmental concerns, and they are an important piece of this puzzle. And I'm not sure if this is exactly what the was meant in the statement that came out from NND, and I haven't had a chance to clarify with them. But you really don't want to say to Vic Gold, please stop doing that work. You want Vic Gold to be doing that work right now. It's important. And you know, like I just think you would never want a consequence like that, because right now our focus needs to be, and I think that NND agreed with this, and at least in my direct meetings, and I believe from the team, from the technical team sitting down with them, number one is safety on the site. And number two is environmental protection. And given those concerns are our focus, that's what I've asked our team to work on. This stopping mining doesn't change that, right? Those are important priorities that we need to address. And I think the deeper question that they have posed, I think will take time to work through. I thank them for their comments. I certainly thank them for their involvement, and I thank them for their concerns.
Thank you. Jackie, do you have a question? Let's start with one.
Sorry, I just want to pick up on the last question, but to be 100% clear, Nacho Nayak has called for an immediate halt of all mining activities on its traditional territory. Will you commit to that? They're also calling for an independent investigation or public inquiry of sorts. That call has also been backed by the White River First Nation. Will you commit to that?
Jackie, I'll just give the same answer that I just gave to Tim. When I had a conversation with Nacho Nayak and it included some of their technical folks, we talked about the company and their priorities, and I was happy to see Victoria Gold state that their priorities are environmental protection and safety, because those were the ones that Nacho Nayak and us as a government had agreed are the top priorities. So I sure hope that there wouldn't be this unintended consequence of this suggestion that we would lose the ability to achieve those two goals right now. So who has the equipment on site at the Eagle Gold Mine? It's Victoria Gold. Who has the staff on site and the expertise on site? Victoria Gold. So I would like to work with them to achieve as much environmental protection and safety as we can at this time. And that is my priority.
So is the answer there no?
The answer that I just gave and will give again is that we've heard NND with their request, and I have to turn back. It's a big question to shut down mining. I'm pretty sure they don't wish to shut down the work that's happening to do that environmental remediation at the site right now. And that is the mine company that is doing that work. So you're asking me this. I understand you want to get a response from me around whether we're going to fulfill this request. All I'm saying at this point is we've heard it and we will consider it. Then you also asked about this question of an independent investigation. When we met with Nacho Nayak last week, we agreed that we should go back, talk. Well, we said, okay, let's talk about that and consider what it looks like. So we gave each other a task. So I will meet with my government to talk that through. And I am sure we all want to get at the questions of what caused this. When I talked with some of the technical experts over the past couple of days, you know, one of the ways that you would start to investigate what it is that caused it would have you getting up on the heap leach, maybe drilling a test hole. But we don't think it's safe to do that. So if that investigation is not supportive of the safety priority and the priority of environmental protection, then it's going to take time. Absolutely, we want to resolve that question of what caused this. And I think that what we said with NND was let's both go back and think what that would look like, and then come forward at our next meeting to talk about that and to come up with a shared vision of what that could look like. So you have to understand that this crew, I mean, first of all, we had a fire, it took out the power to the mine. They then went on generators. We had a fire on the North Klondike. It made it difficult for getting supplies into the mine. We worked with HPW and Wildland Fire to get those supplies ferried across. We've had fires in the site which required evacuation of or reducing the number of personnel to essential on site. That's all in the middle of trying to address this. This team and NND's team has been flat out. They're working hard to get the public information and us as government's information so that we can make the best choices possible. I do think that there needs that we have to get the deeper answers, but I do think we need to keep those priorities up front. And so what we did was we committed to NND last week to come back to the next time we sit down as a group and look at how that could be framed. And the next day I had suggestions from the deputy minister about tools we could use around those types of, analysis.
Thank you for that, Minister. I'd like to shift to letting some of the reporters joining remotely to ask. I'm sorry, there's one more reporter in there. All right. Introduce yourself and ask a question. Go ahead.
Stuart Bonnell, Shown FM. I really wish I had a chance to ask the last two questions. But what does reconciliation look like going forward, considering everything that's happened in the last week and a half? How does reconciliation for First Nation of Nacho done look if for instance the halting all mining isn't possible?
Reconciliation has so many facets. Yesterday, we were talking about call to action number 17 with the cabinet. Nothing to do with this, but there's so many pieces which we're working on all the time. I think in this instance, what are we doing around it? Like, how are we working with NND to try and make this better? We, for example, they asked us to support them in around the technical experts that we were bringing on. They said, on the night that it happened, I got a call from the executive director. He said, you need to let me know who's going to site. I sent him a note that night to say, here's who's going up. And he said, well, who are you getting as a heap leach expert? And so we had already put the call in. I think it had probably been Aaron who put the call in, but whoever it was, the next day we secured one of our technical experts and we said, this is who we've got. And they said, oh, that person is great. They said, okay, we have people that we want to bring on. Can you provide us funding for those technical experts? And we said, yes. And then yesterday we had a crew, 2 of our technical experts. We had planned for 3 of our officials to head up, inspectors to head to the mine site with a helicopter flight to go up there and get as much information as they could to come on back and share it with us as governments. But in that moment, I said, okay, hold on, where's NND here? So what we did was we bumped one of our inspectors and we put one of NND's inspectors onto the flight. And then we got our other person to drive up and to do a bunch of sampling as well, water sampling. So look, I appreciate your question, Stuart, about the importance of reconciliation. I guess we should never lose sight of it, but honestly, I think the point, and I hear Chief Hope's words in my head, where she's talking about the importance of working collaboratively and working closely. And we are making efforts to do that. And at the same time, we're also trying to navigate wildfires. We're also trying to navigate this very difficult situation. There's a lot going on at once. So I just recommit for us to work closely with NND so that the solutions will be as good as possible. Do I think that we will always agree? No, but and am I, I heard Chief come out and talk about it and express concern about whether we were taking it seriously enough. And I heard one of her technical experts, Cord, come out and talk about that last week. I've known Cord for many years. I'm glad that he's working on the project with NND. And so I'll take that criticism and that's fine. But I will also say, from my perspective, this team has been working very hard to address a difficult situation. And I think that we will continue to work closely with NND.
Thanks for that. We have some people online looking to ask questions. Ashley with Canadian Press says she has many questions. We'll let her ask one. Ashley, when you're able.
Success. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I am just a little bit bamboozled by the press release that Victoria Gold sent out maybe an hour or so before this scheduled press conference that they presumably would have known about, which says that their water testing has found no cyanide. Do you have any explanation for why their results would be so different than the ones that your experts have found?
Sorry about that. Start and then we'll go. Hi, Ashley. I think that we need to understand that what our experts were telling us is that we need a lot of samples. We need a lot of samples over time. We need a lot of samples in different locations. And so far, we started collecting those samples, and then we got fires entered, and it got interrupted. But the point is, we need to be taking a lot of samples, and we're going to see them. That, like again, I use the analogy for us of COVID. There can be some false negatives. There can be some false positives. And it's as you get more and more information that we will get a clearer and clearer picture of what it's looking like. And so, and I think I said this yesterday to the media, if you see a sample that says, no, you don't have cyanide, that doesn't mean that the risk is gone. This is a serious and significant slide. Over time, we will need to do a lot of monitoring to understand how, where, and when those potential contaminants are moving through either the surface or the groundwater, and what that looks like. So NND is also collecting samples, and I think there should be hearing back sometime in the next couple of days or day or so. And so we're going to start to get a clearer picture in time. And seeing no cyanide at one point in time doesn't mean that there aren't or other constituent elements that we're concerned about. It doesn't mean that you can't keep looking. And we know that a big chunk of the heap leach came beyond containment, and we know that there is cyanide in that, cyanide solution in that, so we will have to do a lot of testing over time.
Anything further from staff, or is that good?
The only note I would add is that we're working with the First Nation of Nacho Nyack Dun daily and sorting out information sharing processes between ourselves and also looking to that with the company as well. So.
Thank you, Kelly. I see that Lindsay Duncombe with the National would like to ask a question. Being asked to be unmuted.
I would say that.
Thanks. I think, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
My question is about the possibility of further slides and on the site. What kind of concern do you have about stability there? What work is being done to prevent further slides from happening and getting into the environment? And how challenging is that when it appears as though the territory and the company aren't necessarily singing from the same songbook?
Thank you, Lindsay. Stephen Mead, our Assistant Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources, would like to field that one. And if you can mute yourself. We're hearing something background. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the question, Lindsay. And in a moment, I'm going to turn to Mark. I'm just giving Mark notification that I'm going to turn to him because he is our heap leach expert. But I just want to let you know that this morning there was a technical meeting between Nacho Nyack Dun and ourselves, including Chief Hope. The potential for remobilization or additional movement of that heap leach was identified as a risk. We talked very briefly about the sort of mitigations or things you would have to do on the ground to limit the impacts of that. We also talked a little bit about what might be possible to prevent that happening. As you recognized, it's a dynamic situation on site. Safety can't be assured if you're on the pad, so it does make it more challenging. But we did agree, and we are meeting again this afternoon, and that's one of the pieces that we're going to work with their technical team on to start to describe the actions that we need to take right now, on the company needs to take right now to prevent future mobilization and future incidents. You've seen the photo, I'm sure there's a photo right there up on the screen. I don't know if you can see that, Lindsay. You can see the slide location right now. You can also see down from the slide, there's a pond, and even further down from the slide, there's a camp. They jump out quite obviously as potential risks should that slide be mobilized. So we're working very quickly to understand what could happen and what we would need to do to respond and also to mitigate the likelihood. Now, I'm going to turn to Mark. So this is your acknowledgement, Mark, to speak. But just explain a little bit about to everybody in the room about what the mechanisms may be and what those sort of risks might look like of an additional movement.
Mark, if you could quickly introduce yourself as well for the benefit of people joining.
Yes, thank you. This is Mark Smith. I'm both a geotechnical engineer and a heap leach specialist. I think Kelly called me a heap leach expert earlier. I appreciate the flattery. So yeah, I think that's actually a fantastic question. I think the risk of secondary failures or re-triggering failures is pretty significant, especially as we move into the summer wet season. The site gets on average about 100 millimeters in July and in August, so each month. So that's enough rainfall to make me worried about remobilizing parts of the slide. As my first professor of geotechnical engineering told me that if it wasn't for water, we wouldn't need geotechnical engineers. And so my whole career, that's turned out to be true. It's always water that causes these problems. In that picture, we're looking at the debris flow that's left for containment down the center of Dublin Gulch. And on the right is a bit of the slide that's off containment. And then there's more slide material to the right off that picture. The debris flow itself is not likely to remobilize into a landslide, but erosion of that material in big cloudbursts concerns me, and moving that sediment down the ravine further. Off the picture, and I'm sure most people here have seen the pictures that are available online. There's a subvertical scarp at the head of the rotational failure. That scarp is on the order of 50 or 60 meters high, and it's very, very steep. It's too steep to be stable. That slope will come down. It will either come down in a big rainstorm, or Vic Gold will find some way to safely bring it down. That will be part of our conversation this afternoon on what are the possible ways to bring that down safely. Because we can't get up on the slide, we certainly can't, we can't walk on the slide, we can't bring heavy equipment on the slide. So we have limited options on how we can stabilize that slope. But that slope is very vulnerable to re-triggering in a rainfall. And if that scarp re-triggers and leaves containment, it could also cause some of this debris flow we're looking at in this picture to also move.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mark.
I think it's clear to say that everybody is very alive to that risk. The company's very alive to that risk. NND is very alive to that risk, and we're very alive to that risk. Working with NND right now and this afternoon, we've got to identify the measures that need to be taken on site, and we need to make sure they happen so that we mitigate those risks.
Thanks, Stephen. We have Niall McGee with the Global Mail on the call. Niall, would you like to ask a question?
Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. If I remember correctly, Minister said, or somebody said 2 million tons material had left containment. Approximately how much cyanide is in that 2 million tons? If you could specify, just give me a round figure in terms of the quantity. I'm sure that's knowable because the company would have an estimation, I'm sure, and I'm sure it would have been relayed to you guys. If you could just approximate the amount. Thank you.
I think we're going to rely on Mark here. The question being the amount of material that escaped containment from the pad. Have we got preliminary estimates of how much cyanide solution that may have contained?
I've made some very preliminary and very broad brush estimates. The ore on the heap when it was under leach contains about 14% moisture, and that's based on Vic Gold's own experts in their annual water balance modeling and their latest report. When that debris came off the pad and left containment, and I think 2 million tons is the current best estimate, and having seen the site yesterday, it's reasonably close. So 14% of 2 million tons would be roughly 300,000 cubic meters that was in it when it left. Some of that material, some of that 300,000 cubic meters has flowed into the underlying placer mine tailings. The slide on the heap contains roughly the same amount of water, and that's also been draining out, and I would assume draining through this debris flow and also into those placer tailings. So the residual moisture content, that is the moisture content in that material after it's been allowed to drain for a while, and per the same experts and the same study, is somewhere around 8%. So the current water content or solution content in that material will be something between 14 and 8%.
Thank you for that, Mark. I see we have Blair McBride with the Northern Miner. Blair, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. So it was mentioned in the technical briefing last week that Victoria Gold would face charges from this incident. What specific charges are they facing?
I think he might have a wire crossed. I don't believe we said that last week. He may have, there was some discussion about existing charges against the company.
Okay, what exactly are the existing charges?
So I can turn you over to Will Tunian. He is our Director of Compliance, Monitoring and Inspections.
Sure. The company isn't facing any charges right now. We're still gathering information. Current charges, I mentioned last week, the company's facing several charges. It's in regards to proper handling of water. They have terms and conditions of their license in regards to water management on site. And the allegations currently before the court are from between October 2022 and October 2023. And in fairness to the company, the charges are before the court, so it probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to give any more details.
Okay. Thank you for that, Will. I see online Someone named Camille has raised her hand. Not familiar with the news outlet. Give them a moment.
Hi,
No,
can you
you-
hear me?
Yes, hi.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. So my question is actually in the French. If you don't mind answering that one, that would be great. In French. So, donc, on parle, si j'ai bien compris, on parle de niveau dans la
Sorry,
rivière
just to cut
Agar.
in, we're getting a bad echo. and It's making it very
Okay.
difficult to hear you.
But,
You might need to mute something on your side, like the audio on your
okay.
computer.
Give me one sec. Is that
I think that's better.
better?
Yeah.
OK. Est-ce que j'ai bien compris donc que la rivière Agar a des niveaux 10 fois plus élevés que les niveaux acceptés? Et si oui, quelles seraient les conséquences sur les poissons, par exemple, et aussi sur la qualité de l'eau? Est-ce que l'eau est potable sur cette rivière? Parce que j'entends parler que les Premières Nations utilisent cette rivière.
Et je vais essayer de répondre à votre question. Premièrement, il y a un petit rivière, comme un ruisseau, qui s'appelle Dublin Gulch. Et à côté de ça, c'est une rivière Haggart, en français, Haggart Creek. Après ça, c'est le McQuestion, en anglais River, mais pour vous, rivière. Et après ça, c'est le fleuve du Yukon. Non, McQuestion, après ça, c'est Stewart, après ça, c'est Yukon, fleuve Yukon. Alors, chaque fois, le rivière, c'est plus large. Par exemple, Yukon, c'est plus large que Stewart. Stewart, c'est plus large que McQuestion. McQuestion, c'est plus large que Haggart. Alors, chaque fois, le cyanide change le pourcentage et nous avons des spécialistes ou des experts avec ce chose-là. C'est aujourd'hui, nous avons une première pointe d'information avec cyanide plus haut ou trop haut et on demande les experts qu'est-ce que c'est la situation pour les poissons, mais maintenant, le plus grand risque, c'est dans la rivière Agathe. C'est pas après ça, et certainement c'est pas avant ça, mais c'est une question, on demande avec les experts des poissons et toxicologie. J'espère que ça marche.
Thank you for that, Minister. Kelly McTavish with the CBC is online. Kelly, you can ask a question. Being asked to unmute Camille. She's with Kelly.
Can you?
Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My question is, the doctor said that it is being communicated not to drink from the streams for recreational purposes as a precaution. I'm curious where that is being communicated or how that is being communicated.
Who would like to field that? Should we send it back to health? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If we could have the Chief Medical Health Officer speak to that, that'd be great.
Thanks for that. So this is really with respect to recreational water use. And generally when we say that, we're not talking about drinking as a primary drinking water source. We're actually talking about like incidental ingestion of water during recreation. And so that is much less of a concern. We're actually asking people to avoid the immediate vicinity for recreational purposes. And we're looking at working with other departments to create some signage, I believe, so that can be posted, and perhaps some other messaging around that for people in the area. But I want to be clear that this is not, we're not making specific recommendations around drinking the water because it's not thought to be a primary drinking water source. So the recommendations are really around recreational water use and the incidental potential for ingestion from that use.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, I appreciate everyone's interest in this, and thank you everyone for joining. We're out of time. As we mentioned earlier, we do commit to continue to provide more information as we're able to. Thank you very much.